The next lesson that we're going to talk about is actually color theory and typography. Uh, it's important to know that color is one of the most important components of visual communication, and so this is why we are addressing it in this particular class. So, color evokes emotions, which ultimately lead to action. So, when selecting color in your design, I suggest you research how that particular color affects people. You can see in the slide that green is abundance, and orange is happiness, and yellow is actually happiness as well. So, really think about the color and when you're selecting it for your image. I'm not going to go over every single color, but just remember that color influences people. And think about how you use color to communicate. It is one of the most emotional elements of any image. So think about what color will convey to your viewers. It's pretty important. Colors are actually thought to have temperature. Red, yellow, and orange are thought to be warm, while green, blue, violet are thought to be cool. As an example, if you think about movies, psychological thrillers are often more blue in tone, whereas love stories tend to be shot in warmer colors. Color has a way of tapping into a person's emotion, as I said. Blue and green have a relaxing effect on people. This is why hospital rooms are painted in blue to help people become more relaxed. And of course, red has the opposite effect. Red acts as a stimulant. Saturated hues of red have been shown to raise people's heart rate and blood pressure. Red is actually a favorite color of the food packaging industry, and it actually is said to enhance our appetite. In red restaurants, people tend to eat faster, and so this is why you see them in fast food chains. Blue encourages shopping, while red has the opposite effect. So it does really have an effect on our behavior. As an example, Canadian Dry sugar-free ginger ale switched from a red to a green and white can, and actually their sales increased by 25%. If you are trying to attract a certain personality type, personality types are attracted to certain colors, as you may expect. What research shows is that active people like red, friendly people like orange, high-minded people like yellow, detail-oriented people are attracted to blues and greens. Introverts are attracted to cool colors, while extroverts are attracted to warm colors. There are three primary colors: red, blue, and yellow. Color is the single most strongly visual part of the visual process. Red is emotional, yellow is light and warm, and blue is passive and soft. The more saturated the color, the more highly charged it is with emotion. As a visual communicator, you probably have been exposed to the color wheel. The color wheel is a visual representation of colors arranged according to their chromatic relationship. It was first developed by Sir Isaac Newton. It's a tool for you to help you figure out what colors work well together. Study it to understand how colors should be combined in your images. And I'll explain what I mean by the following slides, because a lot of people don't explain the color wheel very in-depthly, I find. So we're going to talk about color harmonies. Color harmony is an arrangement of colors that is pleasing to the eye. Harmony delivers visual interest and kind of this, of course, sense of harmony. There are four types of harmonies, as you can see up on the slide, and I'll talk about how they are dependent on understanding the color wheel. So the first one, monochromatic, uses a single hue or a color. Monochromatic images tend to be boring unless there's diversity in the design of the image. It can create this soothing effect. It's usually seen as clean and peaceful. So if you're trying to create this effect, select a color and have variations of color, and that will be a very calming type of image. And this is how you would do it in photography, as you see on that particular slide above. The website design industry is redefining minimalism. It's really attracted to that right now by choosing one single color as its design focus. And this is how you would do it if you were going to use it in design in the particular image. So this particular harmony combines 3 to 5 colors adjacent to each other on the color wheel. So typically one color is the dominant color while the others enrich the scene. They blend well because they have, of course, so much in common. So think about the combination of blues and greens. There's little contrast, and these type of images have, again, a soothing effect because there's not a lot of contrast going on. Now look at this particular image and see the color wheel, and then you can see that it kind of it's split. So basically you use 2 colors plus the color that is opposite to them on the color wheel. So for example, in this one here, we have red and kind of a light orangish yellow color with blue. The effect is very lively. So this is a way to kind of create this visual tension and create contrast. In this particular harmony, what you want to do is combine 4 colors that consist of 2 sets of complementary colors. For example, in this one we have it looks like blue and green with that orange and red. To be effective with using this, it's best that only one color dominate the scene and then the 4 kind of enrich the scene. So William Eggleston he's an American photographer. He's widely credited with increasing recognition for color photography as a logistic, artistic medium to display in art galleries. He tends to have large prints that kind of celebrate everyday objects. Everything is equal in importance. Every detail deserves attention. His exhibition, actually one of his first ones, was actually referred to as the most hated show of the year. They called his work perfectly boring. But his philosophy is that he thinks objects were mysteries hiding in plain sight. I guess what I think is interesting about his work is that he understands the importance of nouns or concrete nouns. So like a ball, a book, a doll, a tricycle. When you look at these images, it's easier to link them to memories versus abstract concepts. And so perhaps, he's got a way of tapping into someone's unconscious mind. So here we have, again, ordinary subject matter. He tends to shoot like old tires, Dr. Pepper machine, discarded air conditioners, vending machines, torn posters, power wires, signs, parking meters. And you can see here it's just a soda with light being directed on it. Here's another example of one of his shots and the use of color. So I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with Annie Leibovitz. She's referred to as a painterly portrait photographer. She became a Rolling Stone's chief photographer in 1973. Now, by the time she left the magazine, she actually joined Vanity Fair and then actually later worked for Vogue. While at Rolling Stone, she developed her trademark technique, which is basically she's known for these bright, bold primary colors and surprising poses. So you'll see people are often posed quite weird in her photographs, and then she'll usually have some pop of color. Now, you as a student can think about what you understand about visual communication and color and how to use color. You have the time right now, and not everything especially if you're building a visual portfolio is about breaking news. Try to make your work beautiful. I think it would be really cool if you built a portfolio just around color and the use of color. So think about the lectures in this class and perhaps building your portfolio around these particular concepts. I think it'd be quite fascinating. I'm going to show you some examples of student images and their use of color. I really like this one because she looks like she has ripples in her dress, and then there's ripples, of course, in the water. So again, color, shapes. So let's move on to typography right now. So think about what is typography. Often people think of typography as selecting a really cool font, and it's quite a bit more than that. It's about enhancing legibility. It's an arrangement of the language. It's typically, the arrangement of typeface, and what you're doing is taking words and basically you're interpreting the content from creators and then arranging it in such a way that it helps guide people through this massive information. It's quite a geeky, cool skill to have. Basically, I'm just going to talk about a few points about typography. I'm sure you're familiar with white space, but I love white space and the use of it. You can see in this particular photograph, there's white space around the actual picture of the dog, and there's white space between the lines. So white space, basically, it affects reading speed and comprehension. Here's another use of a white space. You're just increasing the space between lines. If lines are too tight, people will read them more slowly. If they're too far apart, they'll have difficulty finding the next line. So it is quite an art to learn. Of course, when you're designing information, you don't want someone to read across the screen. That too wide of a column makes it so difficult to read across the screen. So it's much better actually to use narrower columns, typically around, 45 to 75 characters or 10 to 12 words per line. Font conveys so much about the publication or the person, and you can see here these are just reflections of studies, and you can see more italicized font is not perceived as credible. So, and you'll find that more sans serif font tends to be viewed as credible. So really think about your font. If you want some curly font on your page, it may communicate something to the reader, and it may or may not have a good effect, especially if you're communicating yourself as a professional. Times New Roman was designed for the Times in 1932, and so you can see that there are two different fonts. There's a serif font and then there's a sans serif font. Serif font are basically font with feet. You can see the little lines coming off of each of the letter. Typefaces, kind of where sans serif kind of took off, is actually in the 1880s, and so basically typefaces with serifs, or basically with feet, would actually snap off. So to deal with that, they actually went to the sans serif font because of the printing presses, and so it was because of technology that sans serif kind of made this came forward, I guess. So you can see that sans serif takes up less space, it grabs attention, it's perceived as stable and mature and formal. You tend to see it with headlines. So it just is something that is quite popular. Verdana font was actually developed in 1996 and was developed specifically for the computer screen. Users in studies and research, they tend to actually prefer sans serif fonts. You'll find that a lot of news websites tend to use serif font just because of tradition, but actually users tend to prefer the sans serif font. You can look at there, the Georgia is a very popular serif font, and Georgia actually reads better on the computer screen because it's wider and it has flatter ends. I really like the pairing of contrasting fonts, a serif with a sans serif. So a lot of times I'll use a serif for headlines and then a sans serif for my body text. They say serif is making a comeback, but if you use it, what you want to do is make sure that you have a ton of white space, especially on computer screens. And this is an example of that there. So some font tips. Just remember that font reflects something about yourself, your business, your content. You know, businesses really think about the font. They think about, you know, should it be, if we think about like an Italian restaurant, they'll have those kind of big fat letters. If you think of sci-fi, you're going to see more jagged letters. So the letters that you choose really do communicate something about you and your content. I like to also change up the font size to kind of direct the reader. Start with a bigger font and then slowly get smaller. Where you see, if you were interested in kind of studying creative uses of font, movie posters are a great way to go. I mean, movie posters are just oftentimes just so simply stunning, but there is quite an art to the selection of their font and the placement of the font and the placement of the type. Sorry about that. So here you're gonna have this one where you're kind of capturing that feeling of abstract. It's quite a beautiful poster. Here we have, you can see here kind of more of a, I guess, energetic font, but it's quite pretty. I actually kind of like this one, Stoker. It's a highly detailed pencil drawing. It's kind of, there's twisting vines and there's numerous elements within the poster from the actual storyline. But it's quite a beautiful font that's in this particular poster. So that wraps up color theory and typography. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please definitely send me an email. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.